Hello Eagles Nation, Vincent Foast here, and welcome to a Week 7 Eagles Chat. We're here at Eagles Chat, we get down right to the news you want to hear on your birds. But before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as well as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds, and you can also find our Instagram in the description of this Eagles Chat video. But now, let's get right into things. And as we all know, the Eagles went up against their big-time division rival, the New York Giants, and won big time. Final score 28-3 Birds. So folks, this is the first time in a long time where you pretty much did not have 54 heart attacks while watching an Eagles game. It's probably the first smooth win for the Eagles and probably since last year. I mean, all the wins recently and even in the past season that the Eagles have been getting, all those wins have been extremely tight and have come down to almost pretty much the last play in a lot of the situations. So seeing the Eagles get a nice, smooth win against the New York Giants, seeing the Eagles beat up on the Giants is a pleasure to watch any day. And hey, I love beating up on the New York Giants every single season. And hey, what can I say? The Eagles pretty much own the Giants, like I said, every season. So it's definitely such a great sight to see as the Eagles improve their record to 4-2 on the campaign, getting their second win in a row. But now, moving on to the injury update. So this week's injury update, we only have really one big-time injury on it, and that is Eagles offensive tackle, Mekhi Becton. Now, the news with him is he is said to have a concussion. He was taken out of the game and evaluated for it in the blue tent, then taken back to the locker room to be evaluated even further, and it did come to the conclusion of him having a concussion. So recently, what's been going on with the Eagles offensive line is there's been a lot of injuries. Lane Johnson had an injury. Now, he did return last week, but now, obviously, all eyes were pointed to Jordan Mailata, who was out this game, who got injured last week. And now with Mekhi Becton being a big piece of the offensive line as well, this is definitely something, not the greatest of news, as we could definitely tell when Mekhi Becton's presence wasn't there. We could definitely tell there was a little bit of a difference there in the offensive line. So hopefully he'll be able to heal up and get back at it again. Obviously, we'll have to see more details as the week continues on how he is doing with the concussion. And again, any information that comes out about this injury you can find on the Eagles Chat Instagram page. So again, make sure to follow us there where you can find daily updates on your birds and important, very, very important updates on your birds. But again, we'll hopefully see him getting well as this week continues, and we'll continue to monitor it very, very closely. But now, moving into the Eagles' momentum. So this is a big-time topic. So let's look at these past two games in a frame right here. So looking back at last week when the Eagles went up against the Cleveland Browns, people were kind of concerned on saying, yes, the Eagles got the win, but it wasn't exactly a big-time win, especially going up against a team like the Cleveland Browns, where a lot of people were thinking, you know, the Eagles, with the talent they have going up against the Cleveland Browns, two different talent levels, why didn't the Eagles get a big win there? And that was, people were questioning it. I was hearing about it all this past week from fans of different teams, and as well with Eagles fans in general. People were asking, what is going on with this team? People were talking, wanted Nick Sirianni out. And I tell you what, after looking at this game, I'm still a little iffy on Nick Sirianni. I'm going to put that out there. I'm not on the level of saying that, oh, he should 100% stay as head coach. I'm still a little iffy on Nick Sirianni. That I want to put out there. But I definitely think this game in particular was a game that really helped get the Eagles back on track and turn this ship around. Now, I said this in last week's Eagles Chat. Yes, the Eagles didn't get a big win last week, but maybe that was the start of something to turn this around. And looking at this game where the Eagles went up against the New York Giants, again, it's a rivalry, so sometimes you don't quite know what to expect. Seeing the Eagles get a win like this where they held the Giants to only 3 points, that is very, very impressive. And that is something where, yes, I understand the Giants are not the best team in the world. I get that. I also understand the Cleveland Browns are not the best team in the world. But what you have to do is when you see that your team is struggling, you have to use these types of games to completely turn around your momentum. Now, yeah, again, I understand the Giants' offense is nothing to go home and talk about, and neither is their defense. But they do have talented players here and there. And I definitely think it was something to help develop this Eagles offense to get their confidence back. That is something that I think was we were starting to not see that much, was the Eagles' confidence was just not there. It seemed to be all over the place. There was no rhythm within the offense. It was just something where when this Eagles team would come out on the field, you could just feel that there was not something was just not quite right with this Eagles team. It was just that feeling of every time the Eagles would come out to the next snap, you always had that idea in the back of your mind saying, oh no, are they going to turn the ball over, or are they going to lose a bunch of yards, or are they going to do this, or are they going to do that? So it was kind of that feeling where when you would watch the Eagles come up for a snap, in the back of your head you would have that thought saying, oh no, what are they going to do now? And I tell you what, this game was probably the first game in a while where when I saw the Eagles come up to get ready for a snap, I was not thinking in the back of my head, oh, how are they going to mess this up? This was the first time where I actually saw every time the Eagles were just dangerous pretty much on every snap, especially with Saquon Barkley tonight. Or today. That's a different story. We'll get to that a little bit later coming up in this Eagles chat. But again, to look at it, when the Eagles would come up to a snap, it was kind of that thought, and I know New York Giants fans are probably thinking this, what are they going to do to us now? And I tell you what, this was the first game in a while where the Eagles actually seemed to have momentum fully on their side. They never gave the Giants anything. When the Eagles went for it on fourth down, they would get it. And it was something where they would capitalize. They did not fail to capitalize. The turnovers were not there. They've been doing a lot better with their turnovers. So I'm hoping, yes, the Browns and the Giants, these two past games, have not been against the best teams. I 100% understand that. But the fact that you can use these games to turn around your season against teams that are not quite the best, hopefully this is the starting point of, the momentum coming back into this coaching staff, the momentum coming back into these players, and hopefully can get this team back onto a playoff Super Bowl level before we know it. As we know, this team has talent. We saw what Jalen Hurts was like back in 2022. We saw what he can be. We saw what the rest of this lineup can be. This defense has been, performing better and better each week. This is something where you have to use these games to help develop you more and more and more. And I tell you what, against this Giants team today, what the Eagles showed is something that, hey, we're developed. We're something that, we're something scary. Don't just come in and think you're going to roll right over us. This is something where I think the Eagles are kind of rewriting their book here, kind of rewriting their what people think about them. And hopefully going into next week, they're going to play up against Cincinnati Bengals next week, who have not been really doing the greatest of late. So hopefully we'll be able to, hopefully this is the start of a good transition. But now, speaking of guys who I think are improving, Jalen Hurts, like I was just saying, yes, it did start off slow, and I know I probably sound like a broken record. I've been saying this week after week after week in my Eagles chats that Jalen Hurts and the whole offense have been starting off slow in games, and it still is true to this game. The Eagles still have not scored a single point in the first quarter. By the end of the first quarter, it was still 0-0. No one got a point in the first quarter. So the starts are still slow. But I am seeing improvement. Now let's go over Jalen Hurts' stats. 10 out of 14 for his passing, 114 yards. So not the most passing yards, not a lot of passing going on this game, but he did have one passing touchdown. And obviously, of course, there wasn't a lot of passing because one guy in particular did a lot of running, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But to really focus on Jalen Hurts, I think he's getting better with the quick passes out of the pocket. He's reading defenses a little better, but there is one thing I'm still a little concerned with, and we saw it a couple times today. There were some times where Jalen Hurts would step back, and there were guys wide open. There was a time today where he had Saquon Barkley wide open, where Barkley could have just caught that ball and walked right into the end zone. There was no need for any urgency. Barkley could have just, completely strolled right into the end zone, but Hurts didn't pick up on him. There was also a couple times where Devontae Smith today, he was wide open, and Jalen Hurts just didn't see him. And that goes back to what I've been saying these past Eagles chats of, I still have that feeling when Jalen Hurts gets the snap, he locks onto one specific receiver, doesn't really scan the field, and again, he'll be focused on that specific receiver. Meanwhile, there could be a couple other guys who are completely wide open, but he won't pick that up, and he won't see them. And by the time he does see them, they're covered. And then that results in him, unfortunately, going down with the ship, which we saw a couple of times today, which was not really the best thing to see. But Hurts in general, again, as the game moved on and moved forward, progressed, I definitely think there were improvements. I think he did a lot better with his accuracy. His accuracy has been getting better. Of course, that one touchdown pass, that 41-yard touchdown pass to A.J. Brown, that ball was placed right in the breadbasket of A.J. Brown. It couldn't have been thrown any more perfect. So That's what I mean, is his accuracy is getting better. It's just his ability to scan the field is still a little concerning. He did a great job today on picking up the blitz, which is something he struggled to do big time in the past. So there is improvements. Again, hopefully this game, this big win here, 28-3, a big win that they have not had in a long time. Hopefully this is the start of something very, very spectacular. But we'll see as the upcoming weeks get closer and closer. But now, moving on to the rest of the offense. Yes, we discussed Jalen Hurts, but let's get into our players of the game. Our Eagles Chat offensive players of the game. We have two. First one is an obvious one. Saquon Barkley. Now, he had 17 carries, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 10.4 yards each carry. And with that stat there, he is the second player in history to get the most amount of yards against a former team of all time. So he's the second player in history of the league to get the amount of rushing yards against a former team. So, hey, he said before the game, it's not going to be a revenge game. Well, really? Because that was some impressive play up there. Really was making the New York Giants fans, as they booed him every time he got the ball at the beginning of the game, he owned that New York crowd to a point where I can't even imagine. I mean, he had them shut up. There's no idea, no question about it. Saquon Barkley came to play. He shut up the New York fans, which is something we love to see here in Philadelphia. We love seeing the New York fans get quiet. That's such a great sight to see. Oh, I love it so much. But to stay on topic, Saquon Barkley had one heck of a game. Again, 176 yards. He could have went for 200, but I really agree with Nick Sirianni and that coaching staff for not putting him back out in the fourth quarter, as MetLife's turf, we all know what MetLife's turf does to players and the injuries that come from it. So you don't want to push your player too much, and especially on that field. So I 100% agree with Nick Sirianni on keeping most of the starters out of the game in the fourth quarter, as the Eagles had the game in the bag. So I know some people were mad, like, put him back out there. You know, I 100% agree. He probably could get the 200 yards without a doubt, but to play on the safe side, it's either he gets the 200 yards and you risk him getting an injury, or you leave it at the amount of yards he got today, and that way you have him for weeks to come. So I 100% agree with Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff on that decision to keep him out in the fourth quarter. But moving on to our next contributor, A.J. Brown, who had a pretty good game as well. Obviously, that big-time 41-yard touchdown reception. He had 5 receptions for 89 yards and, of course, like I said, the 1 touchdown. So seeing the wide receiver one running all over the place with that beautiful duo between Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, being able to connect like that. I mean, again, that was one heck of a throw, one heck of a catch. And, hey, that duo struck again in New York. So that was definitely a great sight to see. But now moving on to the defense, which had an incredible game. I mean, this right here, if that's not incredible, what is? 8 sacks. Daniel Jones was getting thrown around like a rag doll. Again, another great sight to see, as they were not letting him they weren't letting him get any type of momentum, not letting that New York Giants offense get anything going. And when they did get something going, the Eagles would stop that momentum like that. And that was definitely some great play out there. But our defensive player of the game, no question, has to be Nakobe Dean. He played one heck of a game. And let's look at his stats. Nakobe Dean had 11 tackles and and he also had 2 sacks as well. So Nakobe Dean has been getting some criticism in the past with his ability to not really finish tackles. He was struggling a little bit this season, the beginning of the season, especially through weeks 1, 2, and 3, to get tackles down. He also struggled a little bit last week. Had a pretty good game last week, but there were some times where he did struggle a little bit with his tackles. I tell you what, today he was a lot more firm with his tackles, a lot stronger when it came to it. And when he got to a player, it was pretty rare to see a Giants player get around him, as he was extremely firm with his tackles, very strong on the tackles today, and as well with the 2 sacks. So 100%, he is our Eagles Chat defensive player of the game. Nakobe Dean played his rear end off and is definitely something very, very good to see. A guy like this who they expected to see a lot of out of last year. He struggled with injuries last year, so it is really good to see him perform as well as he has these past 2 weeks. Really see him get developed, and hopefully, like the rest of the team, hopefully him and the rest of the defense continue to push this momentum into the weeks to come. So another great sight to see from this Eagles defense. A guy like this really thrive. But now, speaking of weeks to come, this is the Eagles matchup next week. The Cincinnati Bengals will be going up against the Birds, and that will be in Cincinnati. So I should say the Eagles are going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. That will be again at Cincinnati. Week 8, Sunday, October 27th at 1 o'clock. So this is definitely going to be a game where the Cincinnati Bengals, they've been struggling as of late, and the Eagles have been recently turning things around. So hopefully the Eagles continue this momentum right into Cincinnati and run over Joe Burrow and the Bengals. That would be a great sight to see. Main thing is going to be the hold down Joe Burrow, as you do not want to let him get going, as if he starts to really drum up momentum, that could be dangerous, especially for the Eagles defense in a lot of ways. So hopefully the Eagles nail down Joe Burrow, not let him get any type of momentum going, to not let that offense in Cincinnati get anything going, and the Eagles should hopefully have another good win. Hopefully we'll be back here next week discussing the Eagles' 5-2 record. Hopefully they get their 3rd win in a row. But until then, let's enjoy this one for now, folks. Let's enjoy this nice, smooth win. So, again, the Birds were able to get the job done, their first smooth, comfortable win of the season where Eagles fans did not suffer through 55 heart attacks watching today's game. Definitely was a good sight to see, and again, hopefully the Eagles this is the start of something, hopefully to turn around and hopefully keep this thing going strong through these next upcoming couple of weeks. And like I said, hopefully they take care of business next week in Cincinnati. That's all for me, and as always, go Birds! I'll see you next week, everybody. Have a good week and enjoy this 28-3 win against the New York Giants. Have a good one.